Hello again. Once upon a time, Britain generated all the electricity it needed without being dependent upon anybody else. The country was a world leader in nuclear power, opening its first nuclear power station back in 1956. In 1997, a quarter of Britain's electricity was being produced by nuclear energy. There was, and still are, almost limitless supplies of coal from more traditional power stations, as well as vast offshore oil and gas fields. You would not have thought that the country would ever be likely to run into difficulties producing its own electricity. However, we are now forced to import coal and gas and buy electricity from Holland and France. What went wrong? We can sum this up in 5 words: left-wing agitators and troublemakers. Let's see how this worked. The cheapest and safest way of producing electricity is by nuclear power. Then came a new stage in the Cold War and a resurgence of the CND movement in Britain and similar campaigns for unilateral disarmament in other countries in Western Europe. The idea was that the West should do away with nuclear weapons, whereupon the Soviet Union would, it seemed, happily follow suit. At some point this became confused in the mind of many people with nuclear energy, and the campaign against nuclear weapons also started to include nuclear power stations. Signs with smiley faces began to appear in the late 70s saying, "Nuclear power, no thanks." The very word nuclear became synonymous with dangerous. This got so bad that the medical imaging process, nuclear magnetic resonance, had to be rebranded, leaving out the word nuclear, because people were refusing to have scans in case they became radioactive. Today it's known only as MR, or magnetic resonance. The result was that nuclear energy became a hot topic, and the British government in particular dropped it entirely and allowed their power stations to grow old without planning any new ones. Of course, some countries, France for instance, refused to go along with this madness. They now generate almost 3/4 of their power in this way. Because of this, Britain is now forced to buy electricity from France. Electricity generated by nuclear power rather than building its own power stations to do the job here. A few days ago, wholesale electricity prices in Britain suddenly soared by 20% because of a fire in one of the cables importing electricity across the channel. In the description to this video, I give a link to a news item about this. This is how left-wing agitators screwed up one part of Britain's ability to be self-sufficient in energy. Then came the so-called Green Movement and worries about global warming, which was supposedly caused by carbon dioxide from industry and in particular power stations run on coal, gas and oil. Again, left-wingers were behind this, in this case environmentalists. They created a panic which stampeded the government of Britain into promising to stop burning coal, oil and gas to produce electricity and instead to build lots of windmills which would do the job just as well. They don't, of course, which is why last year we had to import 11 million tonnes of gas from America and the same amount from Norway. I also provide a link about this above. We could of course start drilling for more gas of our own, but that would cause an outcry about global warming and break a government pledge to become carbon neutral. Much better to do things on the quiet and just keep using gas and oil but buy them from other people. Personally, I don't think it's a smart move to start relying upon Russia for our energy needs, but what do I know about it? Last year we imported 4 million tonnes of gas and 20,000 tonnes of coal from Russia. Rather than dig up our own coal and drill for our own gas, we are making ourselves dependent on the good offices of Vladimir Putin. Let's hope that ends well. The obvious thing to do is, of course, to start building nuclear power stations and begin drilling for oil and gas again offshore, together with opening up a couple of coal mines. This would be an admission, though, that Britain cannot really rely upon water wheels and windmills for its energy supplies, and that would, in the current climate, be political suicide. All this has been the work of various left-wing extremists who have whipped up the public into a state of fear about global warming and anything nuclear. As a consequence, any damage to our supply of nuclear-generated electricity from France is enough to send the cost of electricity in this country soaring by a fifth. Perhaps any engineers or economists who are watching this could explain just why this is a good state of affairs.